My $10,000 wedding cake got completely wrecked, and honestly, I've never felt better about spending that kind of money. Here's why. In the middle of that bright red disaster lay my own sister, knocked out cold. She'd tried to drug me at my own wedding, hoping I'd embarrass myself in front of my new, very wealthy in-laws. Thing is, I let her think she'd won. Swapped our glasses when she wasn't looking, put on my best fake smile, and watched as Sloane, my precious little sister, crumbled right into the cake. It was the most satisfying thing I've ever seen. But let me back up. If you're wondering why my sister would go this far to ruin my wedding, well, you have to understand the history. I'm Amelia, 28, a marketing director at a big firm in Charleston. I've always been the logical, steady one. Sloane, my little sister, is 26 and calls herself an influencer. Sure, she's got 13,000 followers and spends her days online, but she doesn't mention the $52,500 in credit card debt she's been hiding from our parents. Our parents, Victor and Laurel, have always spoiled Sloane. Always. No matter what I did, good grades, scholarships, promotions, it never seemed to matter. Sloane could post a stolen quote on Instagram, and our mother would practically throw her a parade. The jealousy hit its peak when I got engaged to Brooks. He's an orthopedic surgery resident, smart, kind, and honestly, he makes my heart skip. But what really got to Sloane wasn't Brooks himself, it was his last name. Old Charleston money. The kind of family with ancestors who signed important documents and had ships named after them. The kind of family Sloane's always wanted to impress. Sloane became unbearable during the wedding planning. It started 3 months before the big day. I was sitting in my apartment, knee-deep in vendor contracts, when Sloane barged in, decked out in yoga pants that probably cost more than my rent and carrying a designer bag she definitely couldn't afford. "I've been thinking," she said, skipping hello, "I should be your maid of honor." I didn't even look up from my spreadsheet. "Sloane, I already asked Audrey. You know, my best friend from law school." She scrunched up her nose. "Amelia, this is a wedding with old money vibes. Do you really want someone in a pantsuit standing next to you in photos that'll end up in the society pages? Audrey's my best friend. She's always been there for me. And I'm your sister," Sloane whined. "Your only sister. What'll people think if I'm not your maid of honor? It'll look like we're fighting. Bad for both of us. Plus, Amelia, this would be huge for my brand. A wedding at the historic Charleston Hotel? With Brooks's family? I could get thousands of new followers." I should have said no. I should have stood my ground. But of course, she called our mother. 2 hours later, my parents showed up at my door. Mom already had her monogrammed handkerchief out, dabbing at imaginary tears. Dad just looked disappointed. He's always been good at that. "Amelia, sweetheart," Mom said, taking my hands. "Sloane is devastated. She feels unloved." "That's not," I never said. Dad cut me off with that final voice he uses when there's no point arguing. "Your sister's having a tough time. The least you can do is make her feel included." "Just indulge her," Mom said, still squeezing my hands. "Don't make her sad. It's one day. Be generous." Classic. They've always laid Sloane's feelings at my feet, made me responsible for her happiness. "Fine," I said. The word felt like swallowing sand. "You can be the maid of honor." Sloane squealed. Mom lit up. Dad nodded like a king granting permission. I called Audrey to break the news, and she just went quiet. Then she said, "Are you sure about this, Pam?" "No," I told her. "But it's easier than fighting them all." "Easier isn't always better," she said. She was right, of course. But I'd already messed up. I'd already agreed, just nodded along. I had no idea then that giving in would open the door for Sloane's nastiest scheme. 2 weeks before the wedding, Sloane texted, "Need you to pay for my bridesmaid dress. I'm a little short this month." She'd picked out an $1,800 silk dress from some place that only took appointments and handed out champagne at fittings. She didn't even ask what I thought. When I suggested something more reasonable for the bridesmaids, she just laughed at me. "You're marrying into old money, Amelia. We can't look cheap in the photos." "What would Brooks's family think?" I sent the money. Didn't even argue. Now, standing in the ballroom, knowing what she'd tried to pull, it's all so clear. Every demand, every little manipulation, every time our parents expected me to swallow my own needs just to keep her happy, it all led right here. Sloane didn't just want to be in my wedding. She wanted to wreck it. And honestly, I almost let her. The Charleston Historic Hotel ballroom looked gorgeous, like something out of a magazine. Crystal chandeliers, ivory silk tablecloths, white roses, and ivy tumbling out of the centerpieces. The hardwood floors shone so much you could see the candles reflected in them. And at the far end, on its own table, stood the cake, a centerpiece that cost more than most people's rent. 6 tiers of red velvet, wrapped in ivory fondant, flecked with edible gold leaf that caught the light like little stars. Sugar flowers, peonies, roses, gardenias spilled down one side, so delicate it almost hurt to cut it. The cake was $10,000. Worth every penny, though not for the reasons I expected. I sat at the head table, right where I'd planned it on my seating chart. I'm a marketing director. I get how much angles and image matter, how the wrong picture can ruin you. I'd spent hours obsessing over the layout. Brooks was on my left, looking unfairly good in his tux, his hand warm on mine. On my right, Sloane, poured into that champagne silk dress, her hair styled to within an inch of its life. Next to Brooks was William, his best friend, head groomsman, cardiologist, the kind of guy who makes everything feel steady. I'd told the hotel staff exactly how I wanted us arranged. Husband on the left, so every photo caught us facing each other, and I'd always get my best side. Perfect lighting, perfect angles. I thought I'd covered it all. In front of each of us, the hotel set out matching crystal champagne flutes, no engravings, nothing to tell them apart. The candlelight made the bubbles shimmer in the expensive vintage Brooks's family brought for the toast. The main course had just been cleared away, herb-crusted lamb, vegetables arranged like art. Staff moved quietly around, a gentle clinking of dishes and cutlery in the background. The room buzzed with conversation and bursts of laughter, especially from Brooks's college friends at table 7. Brooks leaned in close to me. "Did you see Uncle James hitting on your great-aunt Naomi? I think he's had too much wine." I turned to look at him, laughing, twisting my whole body toward my new husband. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Sloane's hand move. She reached across the table, smooth and practiced, as if she just wanted to fix my place card, which had gone a bit crooked during dinner. It looked innocent, even helpful. But as she moved her hand over my champagne glass, it tilted, just a bit. The liquid from the tiny glass vial in her palm slipped into my drink, disappeared instantly in the bubbles. No color, no residue. Nothing looked different. She drew her hand back and nudged my place card, smiling to herself. She thought no one had noticed. Sloane forgot about Audrey. My best friend since law school sat right across from us at the VIP table, with a clear view of everything. While Sloane was wrapped up in her own drama, she missed the woman who'd spent years learning how to spot a crime in progress. Audrey saw it all, the hand, the vial, the drop. Sloane's smirk lingered. My phone, face up next to my champagne flute, buzzed. The sound barely cut through the noise of 200 people partying. But I noticed. The screen lit up, Audrey's name. Just 5 words, all caps, swap glasses. She drugged it. My heart just stopped. Froze solid, then kicked back with a thud I felt everywhere, my throat, my chest, even my fingertips. The room tilted. Suddenly, the chandelier glare felt blinding, every laugh and clink around me way too loud. I didn't move. Not an inch. But years of keeping cool in front of clients and execs, all those moments faking calm while everything burned behind the scenes, that training took over. My face betrayed nothing. At most, I looked a little concerned, like any bride glancing at her phone mid-reception, but nothing more. I looked up, careful and slow. Met Audrey's eyes across the room. She nodded, tiny but sharp. She saw it. She knew. No question. I glanced at the champagne flute in front of me. The bubbles rose like always. It looked just like Brooks's glass, just like William's, just like Sloane's. But it wasn't. This wasn't the usual jealous outburst, or Sloane demanding attention, or dragging our parents into her drama. This was planned. She'd waited for the perfect moment, my wedding, her audience. She wanted me to drink. Wanted me stumbling around, slurring my words, embarrassing myself in front of Brooks's old money family, the people she obsessed over. She wanted them to see me as a mess. Unworthy. Someone who couldn't even hold it together at her own wedding. The people pleaser in me, the one who spent 29 years swallowing feelings and making Sloane happy, that version of me ended right then. I had to act. Somehow, I needed to swap those glasses and turn her plan inside out. But Sloane sat right there, not even 2 feet away, eyes glued to both flutes like a hawk. I couldn't make a move. Not yet. I waited, every sense on high alert, the weight of my phone, the cold sweat on the glass, Sloane's quick, excited breathing, convinced she'd already won. She watched those glasses. I needed a window, a distraction. So I waited, heart pounding. Brooks squeezed my hand, misreading my tension for wedding day jitters. "You okay?" he whispered. "Perfect," I said, the lie smooth as ever. And then, right on cue, fate delivered the most powerful woman I'd ever met. I heard it first, heels clicking on hardwood. Not just any heels. The kind that cost more than my first car. The sound came from behind, the direction of the VIP room the hotel had set aside for family. The door opened. Out stepped Mrs. Victoria. Brooks's mother was a force of nature packed into 5'6". Her navy Oscar de la Renta gown looked like it belonged in a museum, every bead perfectly in place. Her silver hair swept into a perfect chignon, diamond earrings flashing in the light. She'd just touched up her lipstick, a fresh, classic red. She strode behind the head table, heels sharp and clear in the lull between courses. I felt Sloane tense beside me. If there was one thing my sister loved, it was a chance to charm a VIP. And Mrs. Victoria? She was the VIP. The matriarch. The woman whose last name was on buildings, scholarships, and probably half the city's gala invitations. Sloane snapped to attention. She shot up so fast I thought she might topple her chair. She jumped straight into Mrs. Victoria's path, grinning like a golden retriever seeing its owner. "Oh, Mrs. Victoria." Sloane's voice shot up, syrupy sweet. "Were you resting in the VIP room too? I hope the reception isn't too much. These things can be exhausting, right? Everyone wants your attention." And, just like that, her back was to me. To the table. To the glasses. In my mind, Audrey's text was impossible to ignore. Swap glasses. That was it, my shot. I set my hands on the bases of both champagne flutes, feeling steady. Years of prepping delicate presentations had trained me for this, though I'd never realized it until now. Lifting the glasses would draw too much attention. Even with Sloane's back turned, someone could catch me. A guest, a server, Brooks if he happened to glance over. So, I slid them instead. Behind me, my sister's voice kept running like background noise. "I must say," Sloane went on, not even waiting for a reply, her hand brushing Mrs. Victoria's sleeve, "this Oscar de la Renta dress was made for you. The beading, the cut, perfection. You have the best eye for fashion. I was just telling Amelia how elegant you looked. Simply elegant." The silk tablecloth helped. It was expensive and smooth, just enough grip to keep the glasses steady, but not enough to slow me down. I pressed my fingertips gently, pushing my drugged glass toward Sloane's spot while pulling her clean one back toward me. They glided over the fabric like skaters, barely disturbing the champagne inside. Just a soft swish. I turned the new glass in front of me, making sure the faint lipstick mark Sloane had left faced away. Couldn't risk her noticing. All of this took 5 seconds. Just enough time for Sloane to finish gushing about the dress and start praising Mrs. Victoria's work with the Children's Hospital. Nobody saw a thing. The servers were busy at the far end of the ballroom, guests wrapped up in their own worlds. Brooks was focused on Uncle James, who was cornering Great Aunt Naomi near the bar. But Audrey saw. I looked over at the VIP table and caught her watching me, wine glass in hand. When our eyes met, she gave the smallest smile, lifting her glass in a private toast. Our plan had worked. I knew she'd keep her eyes glued to Sloane for the rest of the night, watching, documenting, ready for anything. Mrs. Victoria slipped away from Sloane with the kind of grace you only learn after decades of dealing with people like her. "How kind of you," she said, "but if you'll excuse me, I should get back to my table." She left behind a trail of expensive perfume. Sloane dropped into her chair, flushed and glowing, convinced she'd just charmed my mother-in-law and nailed some Instagram-worthy moment. She glanced at the table. The flutes sat exactly as before. Same places, same golden bubbles. No suspicion. Why would she suspect anything? They looked identical. And her smugness, the way she believed she'd outmaneuvered me, wiped out any instinct to double-check. She picked up the glass right in front of her. The drugged one. Her smile was all poison and pride. "Come now," she said, lifting her glass. "Let's toast to your happiness, Amelia." I raised my clean glass and forced a smile, packing every ounce of satisfaction, every bit of overdue payback, every year I'd spent putting up with her into that look. "Thank you, sister," I said quietly, "to a night we won't forget." Our flutes met with a clear chime. Clink. Sloane raised her glass and drank deep, eyes locked on mine, certain she was watching her plan unfold. I sipped my champagne and watched her swallow her own trap. The melatonin, or whatever she'd slipped in for me, vanished with her expensive vintage. She set her glass down, still smiling, content. I smiled back. And I waited. After the toast, I played my part. Had to make Sloane think her scheme was working. I went quiet, turned a bit away from the table, let my smile fade. When Brooks asked about dessert timing, I mumbled something vague. When William tried to rope me into a joke about awful wedding speeches, I managed a weak laugh and nothing more. Sloane caught on right away. I could feel her watching me, leaning in just enough to make it obvious she was studying my face, waiting for the drugs to kick in. So I played along, let my eyes glaze over a bit, got quieter, started acting a little spaced out. That was all she needed. The corner of her mouth twitched, just a hint of a smile. Sloane thought she'd won. She figured the melatonin was working, and in a few more minutes, I'd be stumbling around and embarrassing myself in front of 200 guests, plus Brooks's whole family. She settled back in her chair, practically buzzing with anticipation, more sure of herself every second. But Sloane couldn't see past her own excitement. She had no clue the drugs were actually in her system now, sneaking into her bloodstream, making their way to her brain. The MC's voice broke through the chatter, smooth and practiced. "Ladies and gentlemen, we now invite the best man to say a few words." The ballroom hushed. Conversations faded as everyone turned to the stage by the cake. William stood up, buttoned his jacket, and flashed his easy grin. I checked the time. Everything was running exactly on schedule, just after 8. William took the mic, and for the next few minutes, he had the room doubled over with laughter. He told stories, Brooks's disasters in the kitchen when they shared an apartment during residency, the time Brooks wore 2 different shoes to a hospital presentation, the moment he knew Brooks was serious about me because he'd started actually washing his clothes instead of just buying new ones. William's speech was perfect. It pulled everyone's attention away, gave Sloane the cover she needed as the subtle changes started. I watched her out of the corner of my eye. She kept smiling, still acting like the perfect maid of honor, but I noticed the way she shifted in her seat. The way her hand drifted up to her temple. The little line that creased between her eyebrows. The melatonin was kicking in. Liquid melatonin works fast, way quicker than pills. Sloane would be feeling it now, a weight in her arms and legs, her thoughts turning a little fuzzy. But she'd blame it on nerves, or maybe too much champagne. She'd never guess the truth. William wrapped up his speech to a wave of applause. He clapped Brooks on the shoulder as he passed, and Brooks stood up to hug him, both of them grinning for the photographer's camera. The MC came back to the mic. "Thank you, William. And now, we'd love to hear from the maid of honor." Sloane's moment. She stood, and I watched every detail. The way her hand gripped the table for just a second. The pause before she stepped away from her chair, like she needed to steady herself. Her smile was bright, but her eyes gave her away. She thought it was just nerves, the normal pre-speech jitters. But I knew. The drugs were settling in, giving her that floaty, disconnected feeling, making her limbs feel heavy. In 10 minutes, she'd be fighting to keep her eyes open. Right now, though, she still had enough clarity to fake confidence, to act like she was in control. She walked toward the stage, a bit slower than usual, but steady enough, heading to the spot she'd probably picked out days ago right by the cake tower. Of course she did. That ridiculous $10,000 red velvet cake, covered in gold leaf and sugar flowers, was the perfect prop for her Instagram photos. The cake was her proof she'd made it, that she belonged here. She edged close to the table, probably closer than the catering staff liked. In one hand, she held a fresh glass of wine. In the other, she took the wireless mic from the MC. That mic, sleek, expensive, and waiting to broadcast every word to the whole room, thanks to Brooks's family splurging on the fancy sound system. Sloane didn't think about that. Didn't stop to wonder what would happen if she lost control, if the drugs loosened her tongue. She just smiled at the crowd and started to speak. "Good evening, everyone." Sloane's voice rang out, clear and strong, filling the room. She stood up there in her perfect dress, back straight, barely moving, like she was holding herself together by force of will. "I'm Sloane, Amelia's sister and her maid of honor," she said. Her words sounded steady, but I knew how much effort it took for her to pull this off. "I've known Amelia all my life, obviously, and honestly, it's been something watching her finally find someone good enough for her." She paused, letting the crowd laugh, playing them like she always does. Amelia's always been the one who had it all together. Plans, career, the whole thing. You could hear a new sharpness in Sloane's voice, buried under that sugary sweetness. And now, she's got her perfect husband from his perfect family. Down below, I sat clutching Sterling's hand, squeezing tight. He squeezed back, steady as ever. He didn't know what was coming. None of them did. Sloane lifted her wine glass, her smile wide and bright, almost too bright. "So, here's to Amelia," she said, voice all honey and venom. "To my perfect sister and her perfect life." Glasses clinked, people murmured polite approval. I just waited. Waited for the melatonin to kick in, for karma to finally show up. Waiting for my sister to fall. The applause for my speech was still echoing when Sloane raised her glass again, that influencer smile plastered on her face. She sounded like she was filming a story for Instagram. "To my sister and her new husband. May your marriage be everything mine will be someday." More murmurs, more glasses lifted. Sterling's hand found mine again, warm and reassuring under the table. I watched Sloane tip back her glass, my original one, the one she'd taken such care to doctor. She took a big, confident sip. At first, nothing happened. She set the glass down, still smiling, still performing. But then I saw it, a tiny wobble, her free hand reaching for the podium like the ground was shifting. "Thank you all for..." The words came out thick and slurred. Her eyelids fluttered, her grip on the glass shaky. Audrey leaned in, whispering so only I could hear. "How much did she use?" I whispered back, "No idea, but by the looks of it, way more than she should have." Sloane swayed, knuckles white around the microphone. The whole ballroom went dead silent, 300 people watching her facade crumble, live. "Why?" Her voice cracked, panic creeping in. "Why is the ceiling spinning?" The wine glass slipped from her hand, falling slow as a dream, glinting in the lights before it shattered on the stage. The crack of it echoed, sharp and final. Then Sloane's legs buckled. She went down hard, still clutching the mic like it could keep her upright. She crashed, heavy and limp, no instinct left to break her fall. The sound when she hit the cake was unreal, a boom, then chaos. 6 perfect tiers of red velvet, 8.5 grams worth of fancy cake, gold leaf, sugar flowers, all of it exploded under her. Sloane's face hit first, then the rest of her, that expensive bridesmaid dress diving into frosting and crumbs and bleeding red velvet. It looked awful. White cream and red cake mixing together, it looked like a crime scene. She didn't move. Her hair was matted with frosting, her dress ruined, lying there in front of everyone. For a second, it was like she'd been destroyed, right there on stage, with 300 witnesses. My mother screamed her name. Sterling was already moving. Doctor mode. He forgot about his tux, leapt onto the stage, dropped to his knees beside the mess. Cut the music, he said, voice calm and commanding. The jazz quartet stopped instantly. Brooks moved fast, steady, and practiced, like he'd done this 100 times before. He grabbed Sloane's shoulder and rolled her onto her side, clearing her airway, wiping thick buttercream off her nose and mouth without hesitation. I watched my husband check her pulse, then peel back her eyelids, his face getting darker every second. The whole ballroom seemed to hold its breath. William just stood there at the head table, frozen. Victoria had a hand pressed to her heart. My dad shoved through the crowd, pale as a ghost. As Brooks rolled Sloane, something shifted. She jerked a little, still clutching the microphone, which scraped across her chin as Brooks moved her. Her eyes fluttered open, wild and lost, staring straight at Brooks, but not really seeing him. Then she croaked out one word, raw and broken no. The mic, right near her lips now, picked it up and blasted it through the speakers. Her voice echoed across the ballroom, warped and weak. Wrong glass. The drugged glass. Her words hung there, thick and smoky, impossible to ignore. Time stopped. Everyone heard it. Slurred, confused, but clear enough. Wrong glass. Drugged glass. The meaning hit hard. Brooks's hands froze. He lifted his head, his eyes sliding from Sloane to where my parents stood at the edge of the stage. His face was colder than I'd ever seen. She isn't having a stroke, he said, each word clipped and sharp. This is synergistic toxicity. Alcohol with a central nervous system depressant. Classic sedative overdose. My mother made a strangled noise. What? No, that's not. She wouldn't. Brooks already had his phone out, calling 911, speaking fast and clinical to the dispatcher, then hanging up. My dad finally managed to speak. This is ridiculous. Sloane would never. There must be some mistake. Brooks stood, looming over them. The look he gave could have frozen fire. You two are going to the hospital with her. I'm not calling the police tonight. He paused, something fierce flickering in his eyes. But if anything else happens, even one more incident, I won't be so generous. The threat was loud and clear. For once, my dad, the man who'd spent my whole life steamrolling everyone, actually stepped back. He opened his mouth, closed it. For once, he was silent. The ambulance showed up in minutes, one perk of being downtown. Paramedics loaded Sloane onto a gurney, her face streaked with frosting and cake, her dress a total loss. My mother climbed in beside her, silent, wearing that old, familiar martyr's mask. My dad hesitated at the door, glancing back at me with a look I couldn't quite name. Accusation? Guilt? Maybe fear. I stared right back, refusing to flinch, refusing to give in. Then he was gone, and the ambulance disappeared into the Charleston night. Chaos erupted. Guests clustered in shocked little groups, hotel staff just standing there, the destroyed cake like a blood-red warning flare. I stood at the head table, Brooks's hand tight in mine, and felt something totally unexpected: relief. Pure, simple, clean relief. Audrey appeared next to me, phone held high like a trophy. I got it all, she said, her lawyer instincts razor-sharp. The fall, the confession. Audio's perfect. She tapped the screen and Sloane's drugged voice echoed again. Wrong glass. The drugged glass. People nearby heard it. The whispers caught and spread. I watched the truth ripple through the room, sharp and sudden. My sister, the golden child, the favorite, had just confessed to attempted poisoning in front of 300 people. Suddenly, the hunter was the hunted. Victoria glided over, her Oscar de la Renta gown still flawless, somehow untouched by the chaos. She looked at the ruined cake, then at me, unreadable. Finally, she said, with a dry little smile, well, this is definitely the most memorable wedding I've ever attended. The hotel manager appeared out of nowhere, wringing his hands. Mrs. Ashford, I'm so sorry. Should we end the reception? I looked at the demolished cake, red velvet crumbs like evidence, white frosting smeared everywhere, the 6-tier masterpiece reduced to wreckage, $8,500 in ruins, and all I felt was light. I glanced at Brooks. His blue eyes met mine, searching, a little worried but not pitying. How are you holding up? He asked, voice low. Before I could say anything, he added, "Honestly, I haven't seen you breathe easy like this since we got engaged." He wasn't wrong. For months, I'd been tiptoeing around, juggling my family's expectations, desperate to avoid exactly this kind of scene. I'd paid for Sloane's dress, included her in every step, twisted myself in knots to keep the peace, and she still tried to drug me. But now she was gone. The monster had finally been dragged out of the room. I turned to the hotel manager and gave him a real smile for the first time all night. "Clean it up, bring out more wine, and whatever desserts you've got in the kitchen. The night's not over." He blinked. "You want to keep going?" "This is my wedding reception," I said, steady and clear. "I'm going to celebrate with the people who actually care about me." The mood shifted. The guests who'd only come because they had to, my parents' friends, those society women who show up for appearances, started slipping out, quiet and polite. But the ones who stayed? They were ours. Brooks's med school friends, my work crew, Audrey and William, Victoria, the family members who'd bothered to really know us. The jazz quartet picked up again. The hotel staff rolled out trays of chocolate tortoise and lemon tarts. Someone popped more champagne. With my family's judgment finally gone, the reception snapped into place. It felt real. I danced with Brooks under the chandeliers, his arms around my waist, and for the first time in years, the tension melted away. "No regrets?" he murmured into my hair. "None," I said, and I meant it. Audrey caught my eye from across the dance floor, lifted her champagne in a silent toast. She'd warned me about my family for years. Tonight, she'd been proven spectacularly right. The next morning, sunlight streaming through our hotel suite, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "How could you let this happen? Sloane only did it because she felt left out. She felt pressured seeing you enter such a wealthy family. She made a mistake. You need to forgive her. Family is family." I read it twice, that old guilt pricking at me. The old me, the version of Amelia who'd spent 29 years trying to win her parents' love, would have answered right away. Would have apologized. Would have twisted herself in knots to make it her fault. But that Amelia vanished somewhere between Sloane's glass swap and the cake crashing to the floor. I deleted the message. Didn't reply. Then I blocked her number. Brooks looked at me from the bed, quietly understanding. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, and for once, it was true. I really was. I blocked my dad next, then Sloane. One by one, I cut every thread tying me to their poison. No more covering Sloane's debts. No more guilt trip calls. No more playing the role of disappointing daughter. Freedom tasted like Charleston air, fresh, a little salty, and finally mine. A year later, Brooks took me to a prenatal checkup at Charleston Medical. I was 8 months pregnant, belly round under my sundress, and finally, completely free. The ultrasound tech smiled as she slid the wand over my belly. "Everything looks perfect," she said. "Your baby girl is healthy and right on schedule. A daughter." Brooks squeezed my hand, his eyes shining. We'd been talking about this for months, picturing the kind of parents we'd be, the family we'd create. "No golden child," I said quietly, repeating the promise we'd made to each other. "Every child equal," Brooks said. "Always." We drove home through the old part of town, past big antebellum houses and oak trees tangled with Spanish moss. My phone, new number, new contacts, stayed silent in my purse. My mother had tried to reach me, sending messages through mutual friends, saying she wanted to make amends, wanted to be part of her grandchild's life. I hadn't replied. Some bridges, once burned, are better left that way. That night, I sat on our back porch with my laptop, typing up a post for the online forum where I'd been sharing my story. The wedding disaster had been too wild to keep to myself. People had opinions. "I need your thoughts on a few things," I wrote. "My family still won't leave me alone, and I want outside perspectives." Question 1. Was I too harsh for swapping the glasses? My mother says a good sister would have just poured the wine out instead of letting Sloane hurt herself. Question 2. Sloane destroyed and $10,000 cake. Should I sue her in civil court, or just chalk it up as an expensive life lesson for her? Question 3. Do you agree it's better to lose $10,000 and cut out toxic people than to fake a perfect wedding? Please leave a comment. I hit post and snapped the laptop shut. Inside, Brooks was making dinner, humming along to jazz. Through the window, I watched him moving around our kitchen, our home, our life, rooted in honesty, not manipulation. My daughter kicked, a strong little thump against my ribs. I pressed my hand there, amazed by the quiet miracle of new life, of starting over. The wedding cake was ruined. The bridesmaid dress was trashed. My family ties gone. And I had never felt happier. The monster was out of my life. The cage door was open. I was finally actually free.